Hey guys, welcome back to my online jazz piano course. You can find the link to the full course in the video description down below. In this lesson, I'm going to talk to you about something called a tritone substitution, which is a very common and very useful type of chord substitution. Now, a chord substitution is a procedure by which one type of chord or one chord is substituted for another. I'm going to start by defining what I mean by tritone substitution. Then I'm going to give you a couple of simple examples and try to explain the logic behind it, why it works. And to conclude, we're going to look at it in context. So I'm going to play a particular piece and I'm going to then highlight how and where tritone substitutions can be used in practice, which is very important. You always have to really hear things in context to understand them. There will be timestamps for all of these things in the video and down below, so you can jump around between them if you already know some of the stuff. Okay, so let's start by defining what a tritone substitution is. In its simplest form, it tells you that when you have a dominant chord, you can swap it out, substitute it for another dominant chord, which is a tritone away. A tritone is an interval that is 6 semitones. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you have this chord G dominant 7. Now, starting from G, you can either go up or down a tritone. If you go up, then you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you hit a D flat. And if you go down, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 semitones, and again you hit a D flat. So it doesn't matter if you go up or down. And the principle of tritone substitutions tells you that you can substitute, wherever you see it, a G dominant 7 for a D flat dominant 7th. So for example, the simplest example that you'll probably see is, let's say you're playing a 2-5-1 in the key of C major. So you're playing, this is a key C major scale, and a 2-5-1 is a progression which is comprised of a D minor to a G dominant 7 to a C major 7. And using chord substitutions, you could instead play a D minor 7 to a D flat dominant 7 to a C major 7. So it has a different sound to it, and as with all substitutions or exchanges, the principle of tritone substitutions only works if it doesn't clash with the melody of the song. So in some songs, this won't really work just because the melody uses notes which really clash with the substituted chord. But basically, it kind of gives you a nice chromaticity to your sound, right? You have a D minor here, and then a D flat, dominant 7, and a C major 7, and the notes have a very kind of, this A goes down half like a semitone, this C goes down a semitone, this D goes down a semitone. So it's a very smooth kind of motion. And then again, this A flat goes down a semitone, this F goes down a semitone, and this C goes down a semitone. So it's a series of semitone movements which kind of create this fairly pleasing voice leading. Now, why does this work? Well, let's take a look again at these two chords, this G dominant 7 and D flat dominant 7, both played in the root position. Now, the most important, the G dominant 7 is made of the first, third, fifth, and seventh, flat and seventh degrees of the G major scale. And the most important degrees that give this note, this chord, its color, so to speak, are the third and the seventh. So B and F. And this would be like a very, very bare bone minimum voicing for a G dominant 7th chord. Just these two notes. Now let's do this again but this time for the D flat dominant 7. So again, first, third, fifth, and flattened 7th of the D flat major scale. We can again retain just the 3rd and 7th degrees, so 3rd and 7th. And we get this very bare bone voicing for D flat dominant 7, which is F and B. Now compare this to the voicing we had for G dominant 7, which was B and F. So it's the exact same two notes. The only difference is that B and F are the 3rd and 7th degrees of G dominant 7, while F and B, it's flipped now, are the 3rd and 7th degrees of the D flat dominant 7. But it's the same two notes. So this is why this substitution works so well. The two chords, G dominant 7 and D flat dominant 7, share the two most important notes that define them, the 3rd and 7th. So just the roles are flipped. So far for theory. What I'd like to do next is play a little short piece for you. And I'm going to first of all play it and write out the chords and the harmonic degrees out on the screen. It's going to be an E flat major. And once I'm done playing it, we're going to look at different points in the piece that can, where we can actually put this chord substitution trick to use. So let me start by playing the piece itself. So the piece uses fairly straightforward harmonic tools. For example, the beginning of the song is an E flat major 7, C minor, F minor, B flat. I'm omitting the higher degrees and so just keeping the chord names simple. But this is a 1 to a 6 minor, 2 minor, 5. So it's a 1, 6 minor, 2 minor, 5. And again, this repeats. And again, 1, 6 minor, 2 minor, 5. And now you have a little transition, a minor, 5 minor, to a 1 dominant 7th chord, to a 4 major 7. This is a 2 minor 7 flat and 5. 1 6 minor, 2 minor, 5, 1. So this 1, 6 minor, 2 minor, 5 really features extensively throughout this piece. Now let's take a look at a couple of different points where you might make use of tritone substitutions. I'm going to drink a little bit of my tea here, just because my voice is a little dry. And let's start by looking at this one, 6 minor, 2 minor, 5. Now the 5, which is a B flat dominant 7, is is a dominant 7th chord, and we can try using a tritone substitution here. So for B flat, the chord a tritone away would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and E, dominant 7. So here, instead of B flat, I played just an E, just a regular E. Now, it doesn't really sound that good. And this just goes to show you that if you try to apply tritone substitution sort of with brute force, you're sometimes going to get a reasonable solution and sometimes not really. So you do have to play around with tensions. For example, this challenges kind of the way or your harmonic vocabulary in the sense that how well you can voice chords. I'm going to give you a couple of tips towards the end, but for now, let's say that we try something like this. Let's try it again. So I've tried this thing here, which is really kind of you can think of it as a polychord, since I'm playing an E dominant 7th in my left hand, and this is a G sharp major chord. You can also think of this as an E dominant 7th with a sharpened 11th and a 13th degrees as well. Now it's okay, it's better than just using just a regular triad, but it doesn't really sound amazing, so you could use it there. Now, the reason it doesn't really work here is it doesn't really work as well with the melody. The melody itself really highlights kind of the basic underlying E flat major scale. And it doesn't, at least to my own ear, doesn't really allow for a lot of chromaticity. It kind of, I guess, I'd say, collides with the underlying harmony. So this might not be the greatest place to put tritone substitution, but let's say you didn't have this melody disturbing you. You just wanted to play the chords. So an E flat, C minor, F minor, B flat dominant 7. Here, if I put this tritone substitution, it might sound a little bit better. I played the exact same thing, but it sounds better, again, because I don't have this melody clashing with my substitution. So this F minor 11th chord going to this E polychord actually has a pretty pleasing sound to my ears. Again, you make good use of this chromaticity. The notes don't really move around that much. Another nice thing about this is that it keeps the same upper note, this same B flat. So the beginning of the song doesn't lend itself that well to, straightforward tritone substitution. Let's look at the other half of the song. Here, where we have this B flat minor 7, E flat dominant 7, A flat major 7, we can again try to use a tritone substitution. We have this E flat dominant 7, which we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and play an A dominant 7 instead. So it would sound something like this. Actually, I played an A dominant 9 here, but it still doesn't sound that great. Again, the magic is in the voicing, and you have to really work at this. Before starting this video, I actually sat down and tried out different combinations, and some of them sounded good and some of them didn't sound that good. So there's no magic solution. You think that even professional pianists like Chick Corea and Herbie Hancock and Keith Jarrett have experimented extensively throughout their careers, and at this point, of course, they have a good idea of what works and what doesn't. Let me give you an example of something that does work. Sounds a lot nicer. Maybe even so what I'm doing here, the B minor, B flat minor stays the same. And what I'm playing here is, well, it is an A dominant 7th chord, but again it has some altered degrees, some tensions. And let's go through the notes. I mean, here you have the 7th degree, the root, 3rd, 7th, 9th, and here you can think of this as a sharp 11. Another way to think about this is an A, or an A dominant 7 or dominant 9th chord with it, again, as a polychord. Here you have a augmented G major chord. Okay, let's try one more example. Now let's look at this little point. Just as a little progression from a 1 to a 6 minor, which is an E flat major 7, C minor 7. And again, I'll say it again, I'm omitting the more complex tensions. You can see them on the screen, of course, as I play them. And I'm going to do something. First of all, I'm going to use the substitution, which is not this Tritone substitution. Instead of this E flat major 7, I'm going to play, instead of it, a D minor to a G dominant 7 to a C minor. So starting again from the B flat minor 7, so basically this is a 2-5-1 substitution. I'm not going to go into it in too detail in this video. This will have to wait for the next lesson in the series. But the thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch, because I have a G dominant 7th now, I can use a tritone substitution. I can play instead 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a D flat dominant 7. So you see? And we can take even one step further. Following this C minor chord, I can add an F dominant 7th chord. Which is not a tritone substitution. I know I can add it in there because you can go from a 2 dominant 7th chord to a 2 minor chord. Again, not a substitution exactly, because I'm adding this chord. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tritone substitution on this added 2 dominant 7th chord. So this is an F dominant 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a B dominant 7. So I'm going to play a B dominant 7 in between. So putting everything together for the second half of the song, we have So I hope this has shown you where and how the tritone substitution actually gets used in practice. Now I promised you one last thing before we finish up this video, and that is some ideas on voicings. I have a lot of videos on my channel that have to do with voicings, and just look for the Interesting Chords Corner series of videos, which really showcase a wide range of voicings for both dominant seventh chords and minor chords and major chords and everything. So I highly recommend that you go and check the individual videos out. I'm going to give you one pretty cool voicing for a dominant seventh chord, which for the B dominant 7 I played, which is this. It looks a bit weird. First of all, there's no B here, so that sometimes throws people off. It has a nice amount of dissonance. And what I'm doing here is I'm playing C, F, and A, so an F major chord in the right hand, and A, D, E flat, G in the left hand. So this is one pretty nifty voicing to keep in mind. And you'll find that really when you, I could have used this voicing for, let's say, after the B flat minor chord. Instead of an A, just a regular, well not the regular, but the A dominant 7th chord I played, I could have tried something like this. So this thing here is the same voicing transposed 2 semitones down from the B dominant 7 to the A dominant 7. So just a little voicing that you can start using, practice, and make your own. And again, I highly recommend that you go out and check the Interesting Chords Corner videos. There are quite a few of them, I think at least maybe 5, 8 on this channel, maybe even 10, which will give you a lot of harmonic meat and a lot of voicing ideas when you watch them. That's it for now. I hope you've learned something interesting, and I'll see you next time.